Refugee crisis. इस बारे में आपने सुना होगा. It's all over the news, it's in all the newspapers. You may otherwise know about it as the migrant crisis. Now, last week, after the image of a 3-year-old Syrian boy's body was washed up on the shore of Bodrum in Turkey, the nation seemed to change its mind about how it felt with regards to the UK and Europe opening its borders to refugees fleeing from countries such as Syria. Now, one debate that has arisen from the refugee crisis is that South Asians and British Asians are not as sympathetic about welcoming refugees into the UK and Europe. So I'm asking you today, what do you think? Rajiv, welcome to Z Companion.
Thanks a lot.
Welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
I mean, when Sujatha was talking about those saying those facts, I was talking about the numbers that David Cameron's letting in with regards to the refugee crisis. So he's increased it from 10,000 to 20,000 while he's in office. Can you just tell me the number that you said has actually been let in?
So there's a resettlement program that the government have already been engaged in. Since January 2014, according to the UNHCR, there have been 216 migrants taken in from Syria, just 216. On the resettlement program.
I cannot believe it, because, you know, there's such an uproar about the numbers that are flocking in. 216 compared to 20,000.
That's not the total number of asylum applicants from Syria, but it's a number that we've taken on the resettlement program, which is what this is an extension of. Okay,
and I mean, I'm referring to it as the refugee crisis.
Yeah.
But can you explain to people the difference between refugees, migrants and immigrants? Because I think that's really important to distinguish between.
Refugees is a class of people that are defined by the convention. So it's somebody who's seeking protection from persecution on one of what we call the convention reasons. So such as political opinion, such as race and religion, etc. Okay. So anyone who falls into that category would be a refugee. If they've not yet been granted refugee status, then they're an asylum seeker. Once they get granted the status, they'll be a refugee. Migrants, I guess, can include them, and also what we would call economic migrants, so people who come to the UK to better their lives, or even temporary migrants, people who come on the points-based system, or even visitors. They're temporary migrants, I guess.
Right. Okay. And so, how do you distinguish between the two? Because I think that might be one of the concerns of people, which is why they may be thinking it's best to keep the borders closed. Because how do you know the difference between someone who's genuinely fleeing from a war zone or you know, because it's not safe in their country, and then distinguishing between somebody who actually wants to stay here for a better life?
I think it's all about motive, so it's the reason that they're coming to the UK, and you have to look at the circumstances in their country of origin. So if you look at Syria, for example, it was, in terms of GDP, it was higher than other countries in the region, higher than Egypt, for example. People are surprised that they have mobile phones, but this is a fairly well-off country. And everyone, the majority of people there would have had smartphones. It's really about the motive then. Why are they coming here? And I know you put this up on your Twitter account, and I also commented on it. You only put your kids on a makeshift sort of raft on the Mediterranean if that was safer for them than being on land. So like I say, it's all about motive, the reason that they're leaving.
Okay, and we have someone who wants to join in our discussion right now. We have Bobby on the line. Hello, Bobby. Welcome to Z Companion.
Yes, hello, good evening, Anila. The two issues you raised, I think we should be more compassionate personally, on a personal basis. I think we owe it to the world for basically some of the deeds which we've done in the empire to accept these migrants, and I don't think, you know, it's a big thing to accept migrants personally. On a second issue which you raised regarding whether the Asian community is very anti-migrants, I find that very hypocritical, because the thing is, I can't understand. We're immigrants ourselves. I mean, we came into this country to have a better life. How can we then turn around and say, look, we're not going to welcome, you know, people who are basically essentially what we were 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago.
Thank you very much, Bobby, for calling in and getting involved with our discussion today. It was lovely to hear your opinions and views. We are taking your calls and questions with regards to immigration, and I'm asking you in particular what you think about the refugee crisis. Do you think the UK UK and Europe should open its borders to refugees, or do you think we should keep them closed? And are South Asians and British Asians less sympathetic than other communities when it comes to opening our borders? Do pick up the phone and give us a call. And I know that we now have Ray on the line. Welcome to Z Companion. What's your view? Do you think the UK should let in more?
My view is, the people who are coming over here, who is sending them over here? If there's a refugee or asylum seeker, where do they get $3,000 to $4,000 to pay for their passage to the smugglers to come to the country?
I've seen there's such a conflict between what we should do, but David Cameron has said that he'll deport migrant children when they reach the age of 18. So how will this be possible, and who will be keeping tabs?
Right, so what happens at the moment is any unaccompanied minor who comes to the UK who's actually unaccompanied, so it's a minor on his own, is granted leave to remain in the UK until they're 17 and a half.
Okay.
After that, they either, this is based on whether or not their asylum claim gets refused. So if it gets refused, then they either reapply at the age of 17 and a half, or there's a decision to remove them from the UK. So that's nothing new that happens there. Obviously, if they're granted refugee status and they're granted protection, then they'll get indefinite leave after that. It's possible because the Home Office say, well, now you're an adult and we can return you to your home country. But I just want to make a point on the Syrians who are fleeing Syria, essentially. Because if we look at the numbers of people who are fleeing, at the moment, I think it's something like 11 million people are displaced within Syria.
Right.
So these are people who haven't been able to move out of Syria, but they're in a different part to where they come from. But there are over 4 million recorded refugees from Syria.
Okay.
And 50% of those are minors, so under 17. And within that, there are, I think, around 40% who are between the ages of 4 and 11. So we think about the ages of these migrants, 4 and 11, 40% of the 4 million. Well, 40% of 2 million, I would say, are between the ages of 5 and 11, and 50% of 4 million, so 2 million.
It's just shocking still. That statistic is shocking. Yeah. Wow, okay. And I know that we have Sholi on the line who wants to get involved with our conversation. Hello, Sholi. Welcome to Z Companion.
Hello, Anila.
Hello.
Good evening. Those numbers are absolutely shocking. I hope that the UK will open up its hearts and its homes much, much more. And I'm working on a project that allows people to do that, not only here in the UK, but around the world, because I don't think it's just a UK problem. It's something that we need to address as a global community, and it shouldn't just be governments that are trying to figure out whether or not they should or shouldn't allow more.
I mean, Sholi, I just want to cut in there, because some people might argue, I mean, you did say there something that we can do to help. I mean, a lot of people are coming from the stance that we should be welcoming refugees into the country, but what if it gets to that point where you actually do have to physically go out and help? You know, what about, some people might argue that if it came to it and you had to house a refugee, would you do it? What would you say to that counter-argument?
Well, my experience over the last week and a half is that there are thousands and thousands of people who are not only saying to their governments that they think the government should be more open into the country to help them in this desperate situation, but that they themselves want to open up their homes. There's somebody in Iceland, her name is Bryndin, and she created a Facebook event where she basically said to people, hey, look, I'm opening up my home. I want to have refugees living in my house if that's what's needed. And thousands and thousands of I think that group now has over 15,000 people who have joined it.
That's amazing.
Many of them, thousands of them have committed to not only opening up their homes, so giving a space to a refugee, but also to contribute resources and other kinds of things.
Sholi,
so I mean,
I'm going to have to cut you there because we are actually heading to a short break. But thank you very much for sharing that information with us. So it's nice to know that people around the world are helping and getting involved. And you know, that counter argument there of would you house a refugee? Clearly, people are. Hello everyone, welcome back from the break. You are tuned into Z Companion with me, Anila, and today is our Immigration Day, and I'm joined in the studio by our expert, Rajiv Sharma, and we are talking specifically about the refugee crisis and your opinions about whether the UK and Europe should open or close its borders to refugees. Do get in touch. Our numbers are on the screen. They are free for our UK and Europe viewers, and as a part of this, a debate has arisen that South Asians are less sympathetic about opening the borders. Why is this? Do you think this is true? Do pick up the phone and let us know what you think. And I know that Raval has emailed in. Thank you, Raval, for watching the show today and taking the time to email. And she has written, or Raval has written, I'm watching your immigration program live. My opinion is that Arab countries, why don't they take in refugees into their countries? And in my view, the UK and other EU countries should control their border and take the genuine refugees. And I know that Rajiv does want to make a comment to this email.
Yeah, the point is that it's actually factually incorrect. Because, okay, maybe not the Arab countries, but the neighbouring countries are taking the brunt of the migrants from Syria, the refugees.
Right. And before the break, we were talking about children entering the country. So what are some of the legal implications? Because, so if I'm right in saying, so if somebody comes to the country and they commit an offence, they'll be deported.
Yes.
So what happens in this case if a refugee or a genuine asylum seeker has come to the country, they've been told that they can stay here until their country becomes safe, and they commit an offence? Are they sent back?
That's not actually how the refugee status works. So if they are recognised as a refugee, then they get, usually it's a 5-year permit to remain, which leads to indefinite leave after that. So we don't say to them, you're going to have to leave if your country becomes safe.
Oh, I see.
But if they do commit a criminal act and then the country is safe, you can revoke their status, so either a refugee status, or even if someone has indefinite leave to remain, that can be revoked pending deportation or because of deportation.
Okay. And what are some of the other legal implications that come with opening up borders?
The legal complications, I think, maybe more political than legal in terms of housing people, in terms of making sure there are enough jobs for everyone.
Yeah.
If someone's in the country as someone seeking asylum, so someone who hasn't been granted refugee status, then we have a duty to make sure that they're housed and that they have sufficient funds in order to maintain themselves. So the government have to pay out to them. It's only £36.15, I think, a week. So it's not a lot of money that they get. They do get housing, but they don't get this idea that they're coming over here for benefits when they're claiming asylum. It doesn't make any sense, because £36 is genuinely all they get per week, per person. So,
but where does that come from? Because is that the government dipping into legal aid, or is that us paying taxes and then it's going to...
Yeah, this is a separate fund. This isn't legal aid. They will get legal aid if they need it for part of their legal fees if they're claiming asylum. At the moment, that's how it works.
Okay.
But this doesn't come out of legal aid.
When it comes to refugees and asylum seekers, have you personally dealt with any cases?
At the very beginning of what we're now calling the Arab Spring, I had a case where the Home Office was suggested there was a woman, and she was either of Syrian origin, going to Libya, or Libyan origin from living in Syria, one of the two. And she was from one and she was living in the other. And she'd come over to the UK with her husband, and the Home Office was saying to her, you should go back to make an application to come back to the UK. And the Foreign Commonwealth Office advice was you can't go to either of these two countries. Yet we got all the way to the stage where we were in front of a judge at an appeal. The Home Office fought the appeal. The judge told them how ridiculous their appeal was at the time, but it took to that stage in order for them to get leave. So I remember we've been dealing with this since the very start of the Arab Spring. And
talking more about some people's opinions on the refugee crisis, and then you can come back with whatever you want to say.
Okay.
So Prinal here has said, initially I was like, what? There's no room, it's overpopulated, difficult as it is for the working class to pay taxes, and then they have poor quality services, especially with healthcare. But then her attitude changed, and she said that we should be helping as many people as we can. Everyone deserves a chance. There are many systems that need re-evaluating, and the governments of today need to work together to ensure this stuff doesn't happen as frequently as it does, so long-term sustainability and civil war issues are resolved efficiently. I mean, I don't know if you can comment on this because it's so political as well, and obviously you're an immigration lawyer, but what is long-term sustainability? What do you think the government could do?
The issue, I think, with sustainability is that there needs to be a political solution to what's happening. So the short-term stuff that we can do to assist is to take in the migrants, take in the refugees.
Yes, yeah.
But the long term, we need to find a solution to the ISIS problem, to the Assad problem. This is talking about Syria,
yes,
but in relation to other nations as well, just to sort their country out and make sure that their country is safe for them to remain in.
Rajiv, I just want to leave our viewers with a note that you might want to wrap up on the refugee crisis, maybe a fact or a comment on the crisis itself.
I think what I would like to say is some people have made this point already. We need to show some compassion because these are people that are genuinely fleeing persecution, and it's not about the money. These people come from a fairly well-off country themselves. It's not about the money. It's really about them being protected, and for that reason I think we should show some compassion.
Rajiv, thank you very much for coming on Z Companion tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed tonight's show. I will be back tomorrow talking to Sidra Jaffrey on our Inspiration Fridays, and we're going to be talking about conscious parenting because it is back to school week, so some of you parents might want some advice on things that children go through and experience when they are growing up and going to school. So do stay tuned to Z Companion. In the meantime, I hope you all have a lovely evening. Good night.